Welcome to the channel, Cheating Secrets. Peter. It was an extra pair of underwear that first made me think something in our relationship had veered off course and was now sliding into soft mud, undermining the trust between us. It wasn't sexy panties in my wife's drawer, it was black underwear in mine. Maybe I'm not the most observant husband, and definitely not the most up-to-date on fashion trends, but I always buy the same brand and style of underwear. Black, plain, absolutely no branding. If there is a brand name, I ignore it. I'm not a walking billboard, and I'm not trying to impress anyone on a first date. My wife and kids also don't give me socks or sweatpants for Christmas, birthdays, or Father's Day. So, when I found a pair of black underwear with the label Calvin Klein on the waistband, it made me pause that I thought about it for a few days, and then I threw the offending item in the trash. The underwear was the same size as mine, which ruled out them belonging to my 12-year-old sons. We hadn't had any overnight guests recently, and we don't go to a laundromat, so they couldn't have accidentally ended up in our laundry. It became a mystery to me that I should take a few minutes to introduce myself. My name is Peter Jones, from Albury, New South Wales, Australia. I'm married to Margaret Jones, née Smith. We have 2 children, Jimmy, who is 12, and Nancy, who is 10. As far as I know, we haven't had any issues in our relationship, at least not until now that I work at Albury Airport as a maintenance manager for aircraft based here. Our company services both commercial and private planes. Albury, New South Wales, has a twin city across the Murray River known as Wodonga. The Murray marks the border between New South Wales and Victoria, so Wodonga is located in Victoria. Sometimes we receive inquiries from people in the Albury-Wodonga Twin Cities area. Margaret works a few days a week at the local Kmart department store. She doesn't need to work, but she doesn't like sitting at home.
Margaret. I'm so tired of that manager constantly trying to hit on me. I wish I had the confidence to go to human resources and file a complaint for harassment, but one of the women in HR is a close friend of his, and I'm worried about the consequences. This is a relatively small town, and there aren't that many job opportunities for someone with my limited skill set. I've spent most of my life as a housewife and a mother. If I couldn't leave the house and meet up with the few friends I have at work, I would be bored to death. The kids are in school all day, and there's almost nothing to do at home. The only real distraction lately has been Roy's unexpected arrival. One day, I was sitting in the Botanic Gardens, having lunch alone, when he walked up behind me and sat down beside me. He reminded me a little of my Peter, except he had a confidence that my husband never displayed. I mean, I love Peter. He's a great provider, an exceptional husband and father. But Roy, well, Roy radiated confidence and charm. He also wore aftershave, something my husband would never use. That day, he just sat down with me and told me I was incredibly sexy and that he wanted to make love to me all day long. How long had it been since Peter last said something like that to me? Roy touched my leg, his hand sliding up toward my thigh before whispering in my ear that we'd be seeing each other again soon. The pleasure hit me instantly, and I felt my panties dampen. I had to go buy a new pair at work before I could even focus on my shift that I didn't even finish my sandwich.
Peter. Be that as it may, 3 days after my unfortunate discovery, I decided to do a little digging, and found that one of our travel suitcases wasn't empty. Inside were several sets of clothes I didn't recognize, including a few more pairs of Calvin Klein underwear. WTF. None of those items were my style either. It all looked like flashy clothes for a nightclub, not the conservative stuff I usually wear. I was baffled by what was going on. I couldn't afford a private investigator, and I'm not tech-savvy enough to conduct my own investigation. I couldn't even ask my friends to help. What would they think? I bet they'd assume I'm some kind of weakling or fool who can't even satisfy his own wife. Margaret is always home at night. She doesn't work night shifts. So when would she even have time to start an affair? This is killing me. Roy. Margaret is so sweet. I'd bet anything her husband isn't fulfilling her emotional or sexual needs. I need to fix that I can't wait to watch her experience pleasure when she's with me.
Margaret. Friday. It's been 3 days since I last saw Roy. I kept wondering, had I imagined the whole situation? Was it just some waking dream or the overactive imagination of a bored housewife? I was sitting in the same spot when I caught the scent of aftershave. I think it was Hugo Boss. I was afraid to turn around, and then I felt a soft caress on my cheek. That deep, commanding voice stole my words and filled me with desire for him that I hoped he would tell me to follow him. Instead, he said, "Meet me tonight at the Stagecoach Motel, room 5. And wear this." He handed me a brown paper bag, and disappeared before I could turn around, and once again, my panties were soaking wet. What am I going to tell my husband? "You're a smart lady, you'll figure out what to say." Later that same day, Peter called me to say he'd have to stay late at work because one of the planes needed urgent repairs. I wondered why a manager was needed for that, but decided not to argue about it. I started to tell him about the last-minute invitation to the bachelorette party, but he cut me off and hung up that I hired the neighbor's daughter to babysit. I was nervous as I drove to the motel, making sure to park my car somewhere it couldn't be seen from the street. I didn't need to knock. He opened the door, and I slipped inside. He took my coat and hung it on the back of the door. A chilled bottle of champagne was waiting for us. Normally, I don't drink much, so it felt like a special treat. And I began to wonder if the rest of the night would be just as extraordinary as the beginning. That I took a sip of the sparkling drink as Roy leaned in and kissed the back of my neck. He slowly pulled down the zipper of my dress, revealing the delicate outfit he had given me earlier. The way he breathed in, as if memorizing the moment, made me feel something I hadn't felt in years: desired. Truly desired.
Roy. She looked exactly like the vision I'd carried in my mind since the day I saw her. That I had admired her from a distance, not sure I'd ever get close, but now she was here, right in front of me. My heart was pounding. I didn't want to break the moment. I kissed her again, softly this time, and she turned toward me, her lips, warm, inviting, unforgettable. That I gently reached for the buttons of his shirt, my hands brushing against his skin. That he shivered, just slightly. And I smiled. For the first time in a long while, I felt alive.
Margaret. Roy was so masculine and commanding that I felt completely safe, even though I had never done anything like this before. That I knelt in front of him, resting my head against him, drawn to him in a way I couldn't explain. I had never done anything like that for my husband. Why was I doing it now? And yet, I wasn't embarrassed. That surprised me even more than the act itself. Roy's hands moved over my body, exploring me gently. He caressed my chest with care, then lifted me and laid me down on the bed. I felt his lips travel lower, brushing against the fabric that still separated us, though only briefly. A moment later, I felt myself exposed, and vulnerable, and more alive than I had in years. Now he touched me directly, and I felt a kind of pleasure I had never experienced with my husband. Caught in the heat of the moment, I accidentally called out the name of the man I loved.
Roy. She called me Peter. Why did she call me Peter? I stopped what I was doing, thrown off for a moment, but then I made a choice, to turn things up a notch. I gently rolled her onto her back, determined to reclaim her focus. As her breath quickened, I whispered softly, "Say my name." Her response came instantly. "Roy. Roy. I want you. Be with me, Roy. Don't hold back." I gave in. Fully. When it was over, we collapsed onto the bed, breathless, and before long, it happened again. That I watched her walk away that night, heading home. That I knew I'd miss her, but deep down, I also knew we'd see each other again. Peter. All the technicians had already left before I was able to leave the airport. The paperwork was a complete nightmare. I had to justify every hour of overtime. When I finally got home, Margaret was already asleep, a soft smile on her face. It made me smile too, as I lay down beside her and pulled her gently into my arms. The next morning, I tried to make love to her, but my loving wife rejected my advances. That I have to admit, it fueled my suspicions. And that's when I decided to deepen my investigation into her behavior. I started by checking her finances. There were no unusual purchases or cash withdrawals. Then I waited until she put her phone on the charger so I could see if there were any strange messages or calls. Unfortunately, I didn't have the technical skills to install any kind of software to track her activity. One of the few skills I did have was internet research. So I Googled how to track a cheating wife. One of the top results was a list of the 8 best GPS apps to track your spouse, but once again, I had no idea how to install an app without her noticing. That's when I remembered, maps often log location history. Now, all I had to do was wait for another chance to access her phone. Easier said than done, since I had no reason to be anywhere near it.
Margaret. I felt awkward turning Peter down that morning. That I was still sore, and lingering with excitement from the night before. At the same time, my thoughts were torn between wondering when I'd see Roy again, and committing myself back to my family. The weekend passed as normally as it possibly could. Since my parents wanted to spend time with the kids, I sent them over to visit, and I went home to spend some intimate time with my husband. Peter was attentive, but distracted.
Peter. To be honest, it felt like pitiful sex. Roy. I can't wait to see Margaret again. I'm planning to meet her during her lunch break. Monday. I just have to wait until Monday. Peter. On Monday, I was called into my boss Jim's office. Peter, you've seemed a little distracted lately. Is everything all right? I realized my life was falling apart, that I couldn't stop a single tear from rolling down my right cheek. Trembling, I replied, I think my wife is having an affair. Oh. I'm sorry, Peter. I don't know what to say to that. If you need some time off, just keep me informed. Thank you, boss. I appreciate it. Oh, and Peter. We're here for you, buddy. I walked out a broken man. Saying it out loud shattered me. Somehow, putting it into words made it all feel more real. And I wasn't ready for that. Jim. I really hope Peter's going to be all right. I'm not entirely convinced his recent absences are just about family issues, but this clearly wasn't the time to push.
Margaret. I caught the scent of Roy's Hugo Boss cologne. His calm, confident voice simply said, Wednesday. Lunchtime. Same place. Another gift. And just like that, he vanished again. Nervous excitement stirred inside me. Since it was during my lunch break, I wouldn't need a babysitter or an excuse at work.
Roy. Soon, I'll see my little flower again. Peter. Have I really lost my wife? My family? I woke up in my car, crying that I don't even remember how I got there. Once I calmed down, I returned to the office and finished my report. I just went through the motions, doing what was expected of me.
Margaret. I left work on Wednesday to meet my lover, imagining it would be the best intimacy of my life. That I deserved this. Roy made me feel beautiful, desired, truly desired.
Roy. She's so responsive, so passionate. She makes me feel alive. Peter. I was done. That I had watched my wife, the woman I loved, let go of me. She was leaving me. That it felt like an emotional divorce, the prequel to becoming a single father, and I didn't want to be a single father. That I yelled at Margaret. That I threw a suitcase at her feet and shouted, Who is he? Why are you doing this to me? The neighbor came inside to see what was going on, and soon after, the police and an ambulance followed. That I knew my life was over. That I just collapsed and broke down in tears. The police and medics took me to the hospital. That I didn't care. I couldn't bring myself to care. The next day, a doctor wanted to speak with me. Do you know what happened? Let's talk about the timeline. I explained how I had first discovered the underwear, and then the suitcase. The doctor listened carefully, taking notes. That he explained that I would remain in the hospital for the next 72 hours under psychiatric observation.
Margaret. Why does the doctor want to talk to me? Is my husband going to be okay? Why was he acting like that? The doctor explained that, in his opinion, Peter was experiencing a condition known as dissociative identity disorder, what used to be called multiple personality disorder. Peter and Roy were two sides of the same person. No, I replied. He was just role-playing. I liked it. He liked it. I'm sorry, Margaret, the doctor said. He seemed genuinely sympathetic that I needed time to process it all. The doctor spent about 30 minutes discussing how this might affect us going forward. That he also explained that Peter would need to see a psychiatrist for a proper diagnosis. This will take time, but there's no reason why you can't have a normal relationship and family.
Roy. So, doctor, what does that mean for me? Are you going to erase my identity? So, Roy, is that right? Am I speaking with Roy right now? I nodded to confirm that he was. I can't answer that question. You and Peter will need to discuss it with your psychiatrist. That said, I don't believe you pose a danger to your family, or to society. I hated being confined, that I hadn't done anything wrong, and I missed being with Margaret. Jim. Peter's wife, Margaret, called me. She said Peter is in the hospital and might be there for a little while. I told her we'll support him. She didn't go into details, but I understood it was a mental health issue. Peter had been struggling at work, although I don't think he realized it himself. That in any case, I'm glad he's getting the help he needs. That we'll do everything we can to make sure his job is here when he returns, but at the same time, I have a business to keep running. Clients and employees depend on us. Peter. I found strange underwear in my house. That discovery sent me down a path I wasn't ready for. It made me believe my wife was cheating on me, and I suppose she was, in a way, but she didn't know the full truth. She thought I was Peter, just pretending to be Roy. The good news is, now that we know what's really going on, we can start dealing with it. And I'm looking forward to the future. Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like. It helps new stories come to light.